So of these, so of the 9 chapters, what, in your estimation, if we recommend, of course, we're going to recommend everyone read this book. What are some of the overarching takeaways once being exposed to these 9 chapters, these letters, these individuals, from an historic and a theological point of view?
Maybe I'll marry the two together since they so
Yeah,
often.
please, absolutely.
A couple of things that I think are interesting, working at just a kind of a high altitude level as I look at the table of contents. If you look at something like the Epistle of Clement of Rome, for example, he's laying out early on what we would later call the doctrine of apostolic succession, where the bishops succeed one another through the laying on of hands, and there is a kind of a visible ministry that succeeds the apostles. He's laying out, he doesn't give you all the details, but he is laying out something that is clearly an early version of this, which is later affirmed by, for example, the Catholic and the Orthodox. But we do have a testimony for this, for example, going back to about the 90s to 100 AD. And then you have to go, where does that come from? St. Ignatius has a very high view of the role of the bishop in the local church. This is, the role of the bishop is disputed in early historical scholarship from this period. But, the crux, to all of these attempts to go in different directions is, where did Ignatius get these ideas? Is this his personal theology he's hoisting onto the whole church? Well, I don't know about that. But Polycarp of Smyrna, if you read the account of his martyrdom, on the one hand, this is one of the earliest witnesses that we have to the sort of Catholic veneration of relics, because after he's burned to death, the Christians come and gather his bones so that they can celebrate his birthday celebration, i.e. the anniversary of his martyrdom. If you read something like the Shepherd of Hermas, you're going to be reminded that, like my boss, Bishop Barron, he likes to talk about kind of the beige Catholicism of recent decades, which he thinks has been, fairly harmful actually to the ethos of the church and to spiritual formation in the church. You read something like the Shepherd of Hermas and you go, oh yeah, Christianity is weird. And on its surface, it almost resembles like a Middle Eastern mystery cult more than it resembles something that might be, kind of comfort, we might be comfortably at home with in American society. And maybe Christianity should be a little weird again. That's,
if you're just the perfect religion, by the way.
Yeah. Well, let's do something called making Christianity weird again. But I had one of my really powerful liturgical experiences was I'd been a Catholic for about 3 years. I went to an Orthodox Divine Liturgy and kind of in St. John Chrysostom Monastery in southeastern Wisconsin. They're kind of in the Athonite sphere of influence, which is pretty rigorous. And you walk in there and it's like a Byzantine time warp back to the 11th century. But I staggered out of there and I went, that is the most powerful thing I have ever been to in my entire life. And I'm just saying this is like some suburban, kind of Midwestern guy, but I walked in there and I'm like, there's power there. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think a lot of our young people are craving something that's actually different from our ambient culture. You read Shepherd of Hermas, you're going to get something that's different from our ambient culture.
Right.
If you read St. Justin Martyr, Justin is the beginning, not strictly the beginning, but he's the beginning of the sort of the complex, marriage is too strong of a term, the interplay or the dialogue between theology and Greek philosophy that has characterized the entire, at least from his time onward, intellectual history of the Catholic Church with various ups and downs. Justin's conviction is that the word is rational. He's logos. He's logical. John says in his gospel, the word, the logos became flesh and dwelt among us, etc. And he's convinced that wherever you find reason, wherever you find, we're rational, the world is rational. He thinks that the rational investigation of the world is going to be a lot of truth in it. And if you purify that, you can bring a lot of this into dialogue with the Catholic faith, because the Catholic faith is rational. It's word-based. It comes from the word. And so he thinks that, what is the place of reason, for example, in relation to the creed or to the profession of faith? And then the whole history of Christian theology really is the outworking of this claim as we try to, fidens quaerens intellectum and ansum, faith seek and understanding, as we try to probe the intelligibility of the revealed word using the terms given over to us by the sort of the universalization project of the early Greek philosophy that asked, what is the difference between culture and, between culture and convention and so forth, and between nature and convention. Well, what is universally true? And that sort of that quest, Justin helps bring that into the Catholic Church. It's incredibly influential ever since then. Irenaeus gives you the first really worked out theology of history, where he's trying to show how the God of the Old Testament, who is the God of our Lord Jesus Christ as well, and that there's a real continuity between these two things. And as you pointed out earlier, we kind of take it for granted because we say, oh yeah, the Old Testament, the New Testament. But we don't forget, if you actually read this, it is at a glance, on a deeper level, I think it's a profound marriage, but at a glance, it's a little bit of an uneasy marriage sometimes. For example, Jesus on the cross says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jeremiah, when he's being thrown into a pit, says, Father, punish them. They know perfectly well what they're doing. How do we account for these two different ethics within? How do we account for a lot of the the violence you see in the Old Testament, or the kind of the conquest narratives and things like that over time within the kind of the economy, within the providence of a good God? Irenaeus tries to give you cues for working through these issues.
Yeah, what's fascinating is also there was polygamy in the Old Testament. Right?
Very much so.
There were multiple wives, which evolved out. Well, thank you for that. So that gives the potential readers, who are our listeners, a glimpse of what our tour guide is going to help us to see. As we read this book, which you are the tour guide, right?
Yeah.
Right. These are the takeaways, right? Yeah. These are the takeaways.
Thanks for watching. Before you go, please be sure to subscribe, like, hit the bell, leave a comment down below. All of that stuff helps us reach more souls.